The icy wind bit at Lieutenant Mara Terran's exposed face as she adjusted the scope of her rifle. The snowstorm blanketing the peaks of Arctura 9 reduced visibility to a mere dozen meters, but for Mara, it was an advantage. Concealed in the whiteness, she was invisible, just as she liked it. Her breathing slowed, the biting cold forgotten as her focus narrowed. A Zernak officer, clad in a reinforced exosuit, stood near a ridge below, barking orders to his soldiers. Mara's targeting reticle hovered over the alien's chestplate, but she didn't fire. Not yet. Confirm ID, came the soft murmur in her calm. Target confirmed, Mara whispered. Her voice was steady, calm. Zernak officer, mid-rank, rallying ground troops near grid 7. Asterisk. Copy that. You're clear to engage. Asterisk replied Sergeant Ilya Cade, stationed nearby as her spotter. His tone carried the quiet confidence of someone who trusted her completely. Mara exhaled slowly, finger tightening on the trigger. But just as she began to fire, static buzzed in her ear, followed by Ilya's panicked voice. Asterisk. Mara, wait! It's a trap! Pull back now! Asterisk. She froze, instinct screaming. Below, the officer abruptly stopped moving and raised a hand. A flickering distortion field rippled outward, revealing an array of concealed energy mines embedded in the snow. Damn it! Mara hissed. She rolled to her side, wrenching her rifle from its bipod mount as the mines detonated. Explosions rocked the mountainside, spraying snow and rock in all directions. The concussive force slammed into her, throwing her backward against a jagged outcropping. Pain shot through her ribs as she fought to stay conscious. Mara! Ilya's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. She looked up to see him scrambling toward her position, his silhouette blurred by falling snow. I'm fine, she rasped, though the ache in her chest begged to differ. Fine, my ass. Ilya pulled her to her feet, his sharp blue eyes scanning the ridge. We've been compromised. They knew we were here. No kidding. She slung her rifle over her shoulder, wincing as her ribs protested. We need to move. Reinforcements are coming. The two darted along the treacherous mountain path, boots crunching against ice and loose rock. Mara's mind raced. The Zernak had set the trap perfectly. How had they known her location so precisely? Base camp's 2 clicks west, Ilya said, his breath fogging in the freezing air. You think they've upgraded their intel? They didn't just guess, Mara muttered. Someone fed them our playbook. The Concord base camp was hidden in a narrow valley, its prefab structures camouflaged against the snow. Mara and Ilya entered the command tent, where a holographic map of the region flickered in midair. Commander Helene stood nearby, her sharp gaze flicking to them as they entered. What happened? Helene demanded, her voice clipped. Mara straightened, ignoring the throbbing in her side. The Zernak laid a trap. Energy mines concealed in the snow. They knew we'd be there. The commander's expression hardened. We've lost too many teams in these ambushes. This can't be coincidence. It's not, Mara said firmly. They're anticipating our moves. Either they've cracked our comms, or they have someone on the inside. Helene's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Instead, she gestured to the map. The gravity destabilizer is here, deep in their mountain stronghold. If they activate it, every mining colony within 100 light-years will be at risk. We can't afford another misstep. I'll go in alone, Mara said. The room fell silent. Ilya frowned. Mara. She cut him off. A team will draw too much attention. I can slip past their defenses, retrieve the device, and get out before they know I'm there. Helene crossed her arms. You know the risks. And the reputation human snipers already have in the Concord. I know, Mara replied, her voice steady. But this isn't about politics. It's about stopping that device. For a moment, the commander studied her, then nodded. Fine. But you move at dawn. Get some rest. Mara didn't rest. Sitting on her cot, she cleaned her rifle with meticulous precision. Each motion was deliberate, methodical. Her thoughts drifted to the mission that had earned her the nickname Ghost of the Rim. She'd saved her squad that day, picking off enemy combatants from a kilometer away. But one of her shots had gone wide, hitting a civilian caught in the crossfire. The memory lingered, a quiet specter in her mind. "You're brooding again." Mara looked up to see Ilya leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. "I don't brood," she said. "Sure you don't." He stepped inside, pulling a chair next to her. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You took a hit out there." She sighed, setting down her rifle. "It's not just the hit, Ilya. It's the way they knew. It's too precise." He nodded slowly. "You think we've got 'em all. I think someone's feeding them intel. And if I'm right, this mission just got a hell of a lot harder." Ilya leaned back, a shadow crossing his face. "Be careful out there, Mara. You're good, but you're not invincible." "Neither are they," she said with a faint smirk. At dawn, Mara stepped out into the bitter cold, her gear strapped tightly to her back. The mountains loomed ahead, jagged peaks shrouded in mist. Before she could set off, a voice crackled in her calm. Asterisk. "Lieutenant Terran." Asterisk. It was Drentak Vash. His gravelly tone was calm, almost mocking. Asterisk. "You've been hunting my people for years. But here, on this planet, you'll find no shadows to hide in. Come, Ghost of the Rim. Let us see if you are as skilled as they say." Asterisk. Mara tightened her grip on her rifle, her expression hardening. "Challenge accepted," she muttered, disappearing into the snow. The wind howled through the mountain pass as Mara Terran moved under the cover of night. The biting cold was unrelenting, but she welcomed the distraction from the unease growing in her chest. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated to blend into the shadows cast by jagged rocks and snow-laden trees. Her thermal visor painted the landscape in shades of blue and red, revealing the faint heat signatures of Zernak patrols in the distance. The militia wasn't relying on their usual disorganized tactics this time. Their movements were methodical, almost military. It was unnerving. As she crept closer to their stronghold, Mara activated a small drone no larger than a coin. It hovered silently above her, relaying visuals to her visor. The entrance to the Zernak base was a reinforced steel door embedded in the side of the mountain, guarded by 2 soldiers armed with plasma rifles. A small surveillance tower loomed above, its floodlights sweeping the snowy expanse. Mara muttered under her breath. "Overkill for a rebel militia." "Acknowledged." Ilya's voice chimed in her calm. He was monitoring her progress from the Concord base, his tone a mix of focus and concern. Asterisk. "You see a way in?" Asterisk. "Working on it," she replied, her eyes scanning the perimeter. Positioning herself behind a cluster of boulders, Mara watched the patrols for several minutes, noting the timing of their movements. She reached for her rifle, attaching a suppressor with practiced ease. The first guard didn't see it coming. A single, muffled shot dropped him instantly, his body slumping against the steel door. The second soldier turned, his eyes wide in alarm, but she was faster. Another silent shot, and the entrance was clear. Mara sprinted across the open ground, her boots barely crunching against the snow. She reached the door and knelt beside it, her gloved hands working quickly to disable the locking mechanism. Sparks flew as she cut through the panel, bypassing the primitive security system with a tool from her utility belt. "I'm in," she whispered as the door slid open with a hiss. "Stay sharp," Ilya cautioned. Asterisk. "You're deep in their territory now." Asterisk. Inside, the air was warm and stale, a stark contrast to the frozen world outside. The base was a labyrinth of narrow corridors carved into the mountain. Harsh fluorescent lights illuminated the gray walls, casting long shadows that danced with her every step. The hum of machinery echoed faintly, growing louder as she moved deeper. Mara kept her rifle raised, every sense on high alert. Around a corner, 2 Zernak soldiers were conversing in their guttural language. She pressed her back against the wall, listening intently. Though she couldn't understand their words, their tone was tense, and one of them gestured toward a data pad showing schematics of the prototype device. Mara slipped behind them silently, her blade flashing once, then twice. The soldiers collapsed without a sound. She retrieved the datapad, her brow furrowing as she studied the screen. The prototype wasn't just stored here, it was active. This just got worse, she muttered. Asterisk. What do you mean? Asterisk Ilya asked. They've already started running tests. If they stabilize it, they could deploy it anywhere in the sector. Mara continued down the corridor, following the faint hum of the device. Her mind raced. If the Zernak managed to reverse engineer the prototype, it wouldn't just destabilize gravity fields, it could turn entire planets into death traps. A sudden noise stopped her in her tracks. Heavy footsteps echoed from an adjacent hallway. She ducked into an alcove, her pulse steady but her grip on her rifle tightening. A squad of Zernak soldiers marched past, their expressions grim. At the head of the group was a tall figure in ornate armor, Drentak Vosh. His presence was commanding, his every movement exuding purpose. Mara remained perfectly still, her breath shallow as he passed mere meters from her hiding spot. His voice carried through the corridor. "The Concord will come for their precious toy," he said, his tone laced with disdain. Asterisk. Let them. By the time they arrive, it will be too late. Asterisk. Her jaw tightened. She waited until the squad disappeared around a corner before slipping back into the shadows. The prototype chamber was vast, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. The device itself was a cylindrical structure surrounded by glowing conduits, pulsating with energy. Zernak engineers scurried around it, monitoring its readings and adjusting controls. Mara's stomach churned. The sheer scale of the operation confirmed her suspicions. This wasn't just a rebel militia. Someone with resources and expertise was backing them. She scoped out the room, marking key targets. Taking out the engineers would buy her time to disable the device, but it would also alert the entire base. She had to move fast. Her rifle came to life, each suppressed shot dropping an engineer before they could react. The remaining workers scrambled for cover, shouting in panic. Mara sprinted toward the console, her fingers flying across the controls as she attempted to shut the prototype down. A warning alarm blared, and the chamber lights shifted to an ominous red. Great, she muttered. Asterisk. Mara, what's happening? Asterisk Ilya's voice was sharp. They know I'm here, she replied. I'm shutting it down, but I'll need an extraction, fast. The door to the chamber burst open, and Drentak Vosh strode in, flanked by heavily armed guards. His piercing gaze locked onto Mara, and he smiled coldly. Ah, the ghost of the Rim, he said, his voice carrying over the chaos. You've made quite the reputation for yourself. But here, you're just another shadow about to be extinguished. Mara didn't respond. Her focus remained on the prototype, her fingers working frantically to overload its power core. Drentak raised a hand, and his soldiers opened fire. Mara dove for cover, returning fire with precision. Her shots found their marks, but the numbers were against her. Asterisk. Ilya, I need that extraction now. Asterisk, she barked into her calm. Almost there, he replied, his voice tense. The firefight intensified, and Mara's ammunition began to run low. She glanced at the prototype, its energy readings spiking dangerously. Time to improvise, she muttered. She grabbed an explosive charge from her belt and hurled it at the device. The detonation sent a shockwave through the chamber, throwing her and the Zernak soldiers off their feet. Sparks flew as the prototype began to collapse in on itself, its power core destabilizing. Drentak rose from the debris, his armor scorched but intact. His eyes burned with fury as he advanced on her. This is not over, human, he growled. Mara scrambled to her feet, blood trickling from a cut on her temple. She fired a final shot at the ceiling, causing a cascade of rubble to separate her from Drentak. She sprinted for the exit, her comm crackling with Ilya's voice. Asterisk. I've got a shuttle inbound. Get to the extraction point. Asterisk. As Mara emerged into the freezing night, she allowed herself a brief glance back at the mountain. The prototype was gone, but so was her chance to capture it intact. "This isn't over," she whispered, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Then, without another word, she disappeared into the snow. The Concorde shuttle raced across the darkened sky, its engines humming softly against the backdrop of stars. Mara slumped against the cold steel wall of the cargo bay, exhaustion pressing heavily on her. Blood from a shallow cut on her forehead trickled down her cheek, but she barely noticed. Her mind was elsewhere, on the device, on the Zernak leader, and on the chilling realization that someone within the Concorde might be helping them. Ilya sat across from her, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "You're lucky to be alive," he said, breaking the tense silence. "I don't feel lucky," Mara replied, her voice hoarse. "The prototype's gone, but they'll rebuild. Vash isn't the type to give up." Ilya nodded grimly. "We need answers. And fast." Back at the Concorde base, Mara was immediately summoned to the command center. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with the weight of recent failures. Commander Helene stood over a holographic map, her sharp gaze darting between data streams. "You destroyed the prototype," Helene began, her tone devoid of celebration. "But the Zernaks still have their research. This isn't over." Mara stepped forward, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "It's worse than that. They knew we were coming, again. Someone's feeding them information." The room fell silent. A wave of unease rippled through the officers present. Helene's eyes narrowed. "Do you have proof?" "No hard evidence yet," Mara admitted. "But their ambushes have been too precise. They've anticipated every move." "Ilya," Helene said, turning to the sergeant, "run a full sweep of our communications and personnel logs. If there's a leak, I want it found yesterday." He nodded, already pulling up data on his tablet. Mara stepped closer to the map. "What's the next move?" Helene hesitated, then pointed to a glowing marker on the hologram. "Intel suggests the Zernak are regrouping at a hidden facility on Theta Prime. If we can pinpoint their research labs, we might end this for good." Mara's jaw tightened. "I'll go." The commander raised an eyebrow. "You're injured. And I'm your best chance at taking them down," Mara countered. "You know that." Helene studied her for a moment, then gave a curt nod. "Fine. But this is your last shot. Don't miss." The approach to Theta Prime was silent and tense. Mara sat alone in the cockpit of a stealth drop pod, the planet's jagged landscape growing larger in the viewport. She double-checked her gear, rifle, suppressor, explosives, and a fresh supply of ammo. As the pod entered the atmosphere, her calm crackled. "It was Ilya. Asterisk. Mara, I've got your back on this. I'll be monitoring from orbit and feeding you real-time intel. Asterisk. Appreciate it," she said, tightening the straps on her harness. "Let's finish this." The pod landed with a soft thud in a secluded canyon. Mara emerged into the shadows, the barren terrain lit only by the faint glow of distant stars. She activated her visor, scanning for heat signatures. The Zernak facility was buried in a rocky outcrop, its entrance concealed by holographic camouflage. Mara spotted guards patrolling the perimeter, their movements disciplined and precise. "Ilya, I've got eyes on the target," she whispered. Asterisk. Copy that. You'll need to disable their external sensors before moving in. There's a control panel on the east side, near those storage crates. Asterisk. Mara made her way to the panel, staying low and silent. The guards were too focused on their patrols to notice her. With deft hands, she hacked into the system, temporarily disabling the facility's sensors. "Sensors are down," she said. Asterisk. Good. Now move. You've got about 10 minutes before they notice. Asterisk. Inside the facility, the air was thick with the hum of machinery and the faint smell of ozone. Mara moved through the dimly lit corridors, her rifle at the ready. She passed labs filled with alien tech, their glowing displays hinting at experiments far beyond human understanding. Ilya, any idea where the research is stored? Top floor, central chamber, he replied. Asterisk. But you've got multiple heat signatures between you and the objective. Be careful. Asterisk. The first skirmish came swiftly. A pair of Zernak engineers rounded a corner, their startled expressions freezing as Mara's rifle spat 2 quick shots. They crumpled silently. But the quiet didn't last. Alarms blared as a third engineer stumbled upon the scene and shouted a warning. Damn it! Mara muttered, sprinting for cover as plasma fire lit up the corridor. The fight was brutal. Mara's every shot was precise, every movement calculated. She used the narrow hallways to her advantage, funneling the Zernak into choke points. Explosions echoed as she deployed grenades to disable groups of enemies. Still, the numbers were overwhelming. By the time she reached the central chamber, her ammunition was dangerously low, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her. The chamber was massive, its walls lined with glowing data terminals. At the center stood Drentak Vosh, his imposing figure framed by the eerie light of the prototype schematics projected around him. So, the Ghost of the Rim has come to finish what she started, he said, his tone mocking. Mara leveled her rifle at him. It ends here, Vosh. No more traps, no more prototypes. He laughed, the sound cold and mirthless. You think you've won? The Concorde is blind. By the time you realize the scope of our plans, it will be too late. You talk too much. Mara shot back, firing at his chest. But Vosh was ready. He activated a personal shield, the energy deflecting her shot. The room erupted into chaos as his guards stormed in. Mara ducked behind a console, firing back with what little ammunition she had left. The fight was desperate. Mara's movements were swift but strained, her injuries from the earlier missions slowing her down. She knew she couldn't hold them off much longer. Then, Ilya's voice crackled in her calm asterisk. Mara, there's a structural weak point in the ceiling above you. A well-placed charge could bring it down. Asterisk. Got it, she said, pulling the last explosive from her belt. She set the charge on a support beam, dodging plasma fire as she worked. With a final push, she activated the detonator and sprinted for the exit. The explosion was deafening. The ceiling caved in, crushing Vosh and his guards under a cascade of debris. Mara barely made it out, the shockwave throwing her to the ground as she escaped the collapsing chamber. Outside, she stumbled into the cold night air, her breath ragged. The facility behind her was engulfed in flames, its secrets buried under tons of rubble. Ilya, it's done, she said, her voice trembling with exhaustion. I see it, he replied, relief evident in his tone. Asterisk. Shuttle's en route. Hang tight. Asterisk. As the shuttle carried her back to the Concorde base, Mara stared out the window at the distant stars. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. Somewhere, the Zernak were regrouping, and the traitor within the Concorde remained at large. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet. The Ghost of the Rim had struck again, and the galaxy had taken notice.